On December 31st, a garbage truck dumped its contents into a Delaware landfill, and out fell a dead body. It would have been a shocking story under any circumstances, but the identity of the victim made it national news.
His death has been ruled a homicide.
Police say somebody killed John Wheeler.
We don't know how he was killed, where he was killed, and of course, who did it.
And also, wasn't he having a problem with his neighbor?
Right. He had been involved in a dispute with a neighbor over house construction.
I mean, there's all sorts of speculation.
Was he poisoned? Did he have a brain tumor?
Days before his body was discovered, Wheeler was in a Wilmington parking garage looking disoriented.
It is entirely possible he crawled into the dumpster himself in his demented state.
You have the criminal medical examiner in Delaware saying that it is a homicide.
Him crawling himself into a dumpster seems really unlikely.
Not based on the footage that I've seen of him in the parking garage, walking around with a shoe in his hand, no overcoat in sub-zero weather. That strikes me as a man who has something wrong with his brain or his head. The idea that this is a conspiracy because he was a Pentagon official really, I think, is a red herring.
He dealt with the most top secret situations in the world at the Pentagon, at MITRE, the defense contractor, for whom he did a lot of work, was very secretive. He was involved in things that were at the center of potential conspiracy theories. What explains this? Do you have a theory?
I wouldn't rule it out, but my hunch is that it was something completely senseless.
We may never know the truth about what happened to John Wheeler.
Today I want to talk about what happened to John P. Wheeler III, affectionately known as Jack Wheeler. So I'm going to call him Jack. So at the time of his death, Jack was a cybersecurity expert for a military defense contractor called MITRE Corporation. Before that, he was a Vietnam vet. He was an aide for the presidential administrations, a high-ranking member in the Pentagon. He worked for the SEC. Basically, he held top positions in politics and military. So when he was found dead in a landfill, it was a huge story. And especially when it was revealed that he sent an email out 5 days before he was found dead. And then there was CCTV footage that was released that, I mean, talk about a plot twist. There are so many conspiracy theories about what could have happened to him. Government, they took him out, and then there's it was a murder, it was a mugging, it was an accident. So I want to do what I usually do on my channel, which is I want to give you guys the facts, then we'll discuss the theories, and then you can decide for yourself. Okay, so I'm going to do this in timeline format because it's the only way to understand what happened. So the whole thing started the day after Christmas. This is when Jack Wheeler sent an email to his friend. In this email, he expresses concern about the United States' ability to defend itself in a cyber war. Remember, he worked in cybersecurity. So this was 5 days before he was found dead. The next day, he gets into an argument with his wife. His wife is Catherine. And the reason why they get into an argument is because he wants to leave. He wants to go to Washington. And it's right after Christmas. She doesn't want him to leave, but he tells her it's important. By the way, they live in New York and he's going to Washington. So the next morning after this argument, Catherine wakes up and Jack is already gone. He's on an Amtrak and he's on his way to Washington, D.C. Throughout this next day, Jack and Catherine are texting back and forth. They're basically having an argument. And it actually lasted for a few days until she didn't hear from him anymore. So what we know is that on December 28th, the day he left, he went to a place called the Metropolitan Club in Washington, D.C. It's basically like this hotel club, and it's got all the political elite go there, like Donald Rumsfeld and all these people. And Jack liked going there. He had lunch there. We do know that. He also liked to stay at the suites there. And he told Catherine that's what he was doing. But the thing is, we actually don't know if he spent the night there. It doesn't seem like he did. We do know he had lunch there on the 28th. The reason why we don't think he spent the night there is because he's seen again on the Amtrak going to Wilmington, Delaware from Washington, D.C., which he didn't tell his wife he was going to do. Wasn't part of the plan, but he did do that. Now, keep in mind, Catherine and Jack had two homes. They had their condo in New York. and they also had a home in Newcastle, Delaware. Newcastle, Delaware is like 6 miles away from Wilmington, Delaware. It's about a 13-minute, 15-minute, let's say, drive. So he leaves Washington, he takes the Amtrak to Wilmington. Now, something really weird happened the night of December 28th. It was 11:30 p.m. and across the street from Jack's home, the neighbors saw a silhouette of a man in front of the house that's directly across from Jack's home. Someone was setting off smoke bombs in that neighbor's home. I'm going to read you a quote. It says, methodically lighting what looked like small balls of fire and tossing them on the floor, Morris called police, who discovered little damage was done, but Morris felt unsettled. It was creepy, he says. The figure appeared very calm, and when he finished, he turned very deliberately and walked away toward the path along the Delaware River. Guess who had a beef with his neighbor across the street that someone just set the smoke bombs in? Jack. They actually had a lawsuit against, he sued his neighbor, had a beef with his neighbor because he believed that his neighbor was expanding the home and building on a historic site that should be protected. So no one knows where Jack spent the night. We just know that someone did the smoke bomb thing at 11:30, and we know that Jack left Washington and went to Wilmington, which isn't far from Newcastle, that same night. Okay, so now it's the next day. The next time someone sees Jack is in the morning. A cab driver drove Jack around Wilmington at around 8:45 a.m.
It was approximately 8:48, and this is the route all of us go for the Hotel DuPont. He basically started talking to me once I had turned on 10th Street. Like I say, mostly his conversation was like, you know, he would never stay at the Hotel DuPont because it's not worth the money. And he got off at this light right here on this side of the hotel. He was dressed casual, and, you know, that's why I remember that so well. But it's... The whole thing seems like a mystery to me, you know. At
around 9:30 a.m., Jack sends 2 emails. The first email he sends to his work, his employer, and he tells them that there was a break-in in his home, that someone stole his phone, they stole his badge, and his briefcase. Then he sends another email, this time to his therapist. Hi guys, I want to share with you a cool new product in the fragrance category. It's actually called Drift. Now, if you know me, you know I love Scentbird, and Drift is actually Scentbird's sister company. It's basically a car air freshener, but it's a whole new way of doing it. So this is the wood one. There's also stone and metal, and the fragrances are amazing. All the materials they use are sustainable, and they use natural essential oils and fragrance oils. Drift also has stuff for your home. They have candles, reeds, home sprays. It's like a one-stop shop to make your car and your house smell good. The car products, like the air fresheners, they start from $8, and then the other home products, they range between $15 to $34. The cool thing about these car fresheners is that you get them on a subscription. So the first time you're gonna get the starter kit, which is the clip and the air freshener, and it's magnet, and then every month you get a new fragrance, which is the wooden part. It's green, fresh smelling, but there's a sugared citrus scent, like sweet citrus. It's so good. This one is called Grove. They have other fragrances, and that's what's cool is that every month, because these last about a month, you will get a new one. They have their staple scents like teak and grove and amber, but they also have like a scent of the month that is inspired by the season. And the subscription is really flexible. You can change your fragrance that you want. You can cancel. You can change the frequency of how often you get it. So if you're interested, use code Noor55 to get 55% off your first month at drift.co. Thank you so much to Drift for the sponsorship, for supporting my channel. You guys check out the links below, and back to the video. And he says that he felt dazed and boxed in a corner due to the fighting that he was having with his wife, Catherine. The next thing we know that happened is he shows up at a pharmacy that he frequents at around 6 p.m. That's within blocks of his home in Newcastle. This is a pharmacy that he goes to frequently, It's his pharmacy, right? It's called Happy Harry's. This is weird. He goes to the pharmacy. He knows the pharmacist there. He goes and asks the pharmacist for a ride to Wilmington, where he was earlier in the morning with the cab driver. Okay? So it's weird that he's asking the pharmacist for a ride. So the pharmacist tells him, like, I'll call you a cab. And he refuses. And he leaves. According to the pharmacist, Jack was wearing a black suit coat, a white dress shirt, suit coat? What did I say? Suit coat, suit jacket, and a white button down. He said he looked put together. Okay, this will factor in later. He looked put together, but he said he seemed upset. Okay, now from this incident at the pharmacy, there is 40 minutes that are unaccounted for where something happened, because 40 minutes later, Jack is seen on surveillance footage in a parking garage, but he doesn't look put together the way the pharmacist describes. He looks disheveled and he is disoriented. He is basically, his clothes are like wrinkled and dirty. He seems to be like confused. He's kind of limping. He's holding one of his shoes in his hands, and the foot that he's like limping with is the one without the shoe. So like, did he hurt his foot? And he's talking to someone in this footage, and that person is the parking attendant. Her name is Iman Goldsboro.
I was closing down the garage, and an older guy, he came knocking on the window. He's saying that he just wanted to come in and get warm before he paid for his ticket. I kind of found it strange because he didn't have a coat on and he had one shoe in his hand. So, like, I told him that if he shut those doors, he can get warm in here. So he kind of walked out that way to the pay station area, and he must have got on the elevator and he walked around the garage. So like, when he came back, I was talking to him. I was asking him, like, what kind of car do you have? Where's your ticket? He said his ticket was inside of his briefcase. I asked where was his briefcase at. He said his briefcase was stolen. He wasn't slurring. There was no blood. He wasn't staggering. He was just like kind of like shuffling along. What really struck me as being odd was that he didn't have a coat on and he had his shoe in his hand. He didn't ask me to call the police. I asked him if he needed money or anything. He said no. He didn't look homeless.
So he was in the wrong parking garage, not too far from the one he goes to monthly. And so he's like searching for this car. He can't find it. It's because he's never going to find it because he's in the wrong place. He just doesn't know that. Witnesses also said he kept telling them that his brother is the one who drove him there, although his brother's been dead for years. And then he also is talking about something about a Hertz rental car. And he's just saying things like that. And he's not taking any help from anyone. He's just like explaining himself. They're like, do you want money? He's like, no, I have money. So this is the last time Jack is seen on that day, which is the 29th of December. The next day is his last day alive that we know of. He is seen in the morning by witnesses. They say he goes into a Subway in Wilmington, like the restaurant, and it's 8 a.m. He orders a coffee. He uses change that's in his pocket, like not change, but like a couple dollar bills, whatever that he had, cash in his pocket to pay. And the owner of that Subway restaurant says that he thought Jack was homeless, that he looked really disheveled and dirty. He said, quote, he looked like a homeless person. He noted that Wheeler wore no coat on the frigid morning, and though wearing dress slacks and shoes, his white dress shirt was filthy from the elbow down, almost blackened. He looked like he'd been living in that shirt for some time. Something else happened that same day, December 30th, but not in Wilmington. Now we're back about 6 miles, 15 minutes to where, remember, Newcastle, where Jack's home is. Okay, what happens is the neighbor, not the one he has a feud with, another neighbor, notices something odd about the Wheeler home. There's like window open, the side doors open, like this is very not normal for the way the Wheeler home usually looks. And so he goes over there. When he goes over there and he goes inside the home, he is shocked. says here, the condition of the house was worrisome. A dining room chair was overturned. Several dishes lay broken in the sink. The counter was covered in scattered spices and bottles. A wide path of powdered kitchen cleanser covered the floor, revealing one bare footprint. The Wheeler's West Point cadet sword, a prized possession, lay on the floor, unsheathed and atop the scabbard. My first thought was that there was a break-in, says the neighbor, Rob Dill. The TV, stereo, and art collection were all present. Nothing appeared to be missing. But there was one curious detail. Amid the disarray, a book lay open on the kitchen counter. It was The Long Gray Line by former Washington Post reporter Rick Atkinson, a nonfiction account of West Point's class of 1966 in which Wheeler, that's Jack by the way, featured prominently. Not only was the neighbor's home smoke bombed by some shadowy figure, but now, right across the street, the Wheeler's home looks like it's been ransacked, but no valuables have been taken. But something happened, right? And we know that these two homes, the people who live there, they don't get along, okay? Meanwhile, while this is being discovered, Jack is in Wilmington, disheveled and disoriented, trying to seem to get somewhere and get a ride here and there, but is like refusing help and agitated. When the whole smoke bomb thing happened, obviously people saw it and they called the cops. Now, what do you think the cops found in the neighbor's home? The one that was, my dogs are going crazy. I'm sorry. Like I said, there's people over there. If I brought them in here, they would be like piercing barking right now because they can hear it from here. So I'm sorry. I have to film today. Nobody cares probably, but I just have to say it. Anyway, so what do they find? They find Jack's phone at the neighbor's home, the one that was smoke bombed. So what does that mean? Okay, does it mean that Jack was there and left his phone there? Does it mean that someone broke into Jack's home, took the phone, and now the phone is there? Did the neighbor break into his phone? Because remember, he said, someone broke into my home. They took my phone, my briefcase, and my badge. So maybe they don't want valuables, but maybe they want something connected to his work. That's what it seemed like. Who would want to take that? Why is the phone at the neighbor's home? There's many ways to interpret it. I don't know. You tell me. Some people even think that Jack may have staged the break-in when he realized he left his phone at the neighbor's house after smoke bombing it, and then did that so that there would be a reason why his phone would be there. Does that make sense? That's what some people think. Anyway, let's move on. So remember, that same day, Jack, he goes to Subway. They think he's homeless. The next time he's seen is at 3:30 p.m. He's witnessed going into the Small Business Administration's office in Wilmington. He goes to the 11th floor and he asks the people there, someone there, for a ride to Philadelphia. He tells the person that he is a fellow federal employee, but when the person asks him which agency, he doesn't answer and he leaves. The next time he is spotted is at this building called the Namers Building. This is described as a high-end office high-rise, and he goes into a law firm there that he knows. He goes there, he speaks, sorry, I just like burped. He speaks to someone at the law firm, and he asks to speak to like a particular lawyer. And he also asks them for train fare. Okay, seems like he's always asking for rides, like he's trying to get somewhere. His stuff is missing. He doesn't have money. He's asking for train fare. And he seems to be trying to go to places that he's familiar with. I'm guessing, I don't know. But he ends up leaving before he actually speaks to the lawyer that he asked to speak to. Okay. Witnesses say that several people tried to offer him help when he was in the Namers Building and that he refused. The last time he is seen is exiting this building. It's around 8:30 p.m. He seems to be like trying to hide his face. This footage hasn't been released, but his wife has seen it. This is her description. She said, he looked to me like he was trying to hide his face. He seemed scared, and he was not wearing the suit jacket. He was wearing a black hoodie, and it was pulled tight over his head. And when he walks out of the frame, he's heading towards the east side, which is described in these articles as a high crime area of Wilmington. And that's it. That's the last time anyone sees him alive. This is December 30th. 14 hours after this last sighting of him exiting the building, he is found dead in the landfill. Okay, this is now Friday, December 31st. He was found in Wilmington's Cherry Island landfill. And the way he was found is that they were dumping like the dumpster onto the pile of trash in the landfill, and the workers noticed a body. And that's when it was discovered that that was Jack Wheeler. Then police determined from the particular trash can and like where the route of the truck that dumped it and all that is that he was in a dumpster in Newark, Delaware. Okay, and when that area is 13 miles away from where he was last seen in the Namers building. So some way, somehow, he got 13 miles away to this area and somehow ended up in this dumpster, and now he's dead. So an autopsy was conducted, and the medical examiner rules Jack's death a homicide caused by blunt force trauma. So let's talk about the condition of his body and how it was found and what was there, because it's important to note that he had his Rolex on, and he had his ring, his West Point ring, which both of these things are valuable. He also still had some cash on him. He didn't have the briefcase. Nobody's ever found the briefcase. We don't know where the briefcase is, but he had valuable items on him. The medical examiner said homicide, blunt force trauma. We don't know exactly what the injuries are. It hasn't been released. This is technically still an open case, so we don't know a lot of these details. They haven't been released. But Catherine, his wife, she said that when she saw his body, she said that he had bruising on his face, his head seemed swollen, but that she assumed the fatal blow was more on his torso. Then there was some confusion about whether he had a heart attack or not. The wife says, she says, quote, first they said he did, then they said he didn't, then they said he did. We guess he had a heart attack. Now, did he have a heart attack? Like at what point? Was the heart attack the actual cause of death? It doesn't seem like he had injuries. We don't know, but seems like at some point he probably had a heart attack and he had a lot of injuries on his body. Once the news broke that this high level, military, he had all these positions throughout his career, was now like dead in this landfill. It was this huge news story, like what happened to him? And the autopsy had come out already and they said it was a homicide. So it's like, who killed him? Who murdered him? And there were all these conspiracy theories right away because they knew about that email that he sent. Then he also had written a book already that was criticizing the use of chemical weapons. And there was this incident that had happened where a bunch of birds, thousands of blackbirds fell and died from the sky in Arkansas like a day after his body was found.
Massive fish and bird kills in Arkansas. Up to 5,000 blackbirds just fell from the sky in the town of Beebe. This happened just before midnight on New Year's Eve.
And then people found out that he was talking about testing and how dangerous chemical weapons were. So they were like, oh my God, he was going to whistleblow about the chemical weapons and the birds. And that's why they killed him. But then when the footage came out of him seeming disoriented, that's when people found out more about his mental health issues. And he had mental health issues. He was taking medication. We don't know, because toxicology hasn't been released, we don't know if he was on his meds or off his meds. But let me give you a little bit of a context of his history with mental health issues. So his West Point class actually had the highest, one of the highest deaths in the Vietnam War of like one class. So like he knew a lot of people that died in the Vietnam War. That's why he was one of the major figures in creating that memorial for Vietnam veterans. And his friends say he never got over it. Like I even found this video of him talking about it. You could tell the emotions are still very raw for him.
This is like a church.
So there's a quote here. It says, Wheeler fixated in particular on the loss of Thomas J. Hayes IV, a former classmate who died after running towards enemy gunfire and rescuing 2 American soldiers. Wheeler talked to friends sometimes incessantly about longing to honor that example. And then his wife, she revealed that he had actually been hospitalized for a manic episode in 2004.
He'd park the car in New York. Sometimes we have a place in the garage, and he would say, I'll go park the car. And then he'd be gone for an hour and a half, wandering around and looking at stuff.
His wife, in this interview that I found, she kind of downplayed it.
I don't think he was acting that abnormal. People that know him saw the videos and said he didn't look disoriented. Also, Jack was not the kind of person that would think, if my foot hurts and I take my shoe off, I walk around with my shoe off, people will think I'm peculiar. He wouldn't care about that. He'd just say, my foot hurts, I take it off, I
found this quote from her where she just called him a little Asperger-y. And then people also talked about him getting angry. Okay, I think this is important to mention because, the guy at the pharmacy said that he seemed upset. A lot of the people that met with him, when they tried to help him, he would refuse their help and leave. So this could play into what maybe happened to him. It says here, like, his old neighbor, Rob Dill, that's the neighbor that found his home and how it looked like it was broken into. He says that he had to cut off Wheeler once when he was ranting about the house being built across the street. Also, Jack used to post on this West Point message board, but he actually got suspended by the moderator, who said, quote, I just needed to give him a timeout. And then there was the hacking thing. Now, this is crazy. I don't know how this factors into it, but I need to tell you about it. So, turns out that Jack was trying to learn how to hack because he felt like there was a conspiracy going on with the government officials in Delaware in the home that he was suing against his neighbor's home. So he didn't want them to build there. And he was so mad about it, but they were allowing his neighbor to build. So he wanted to hack someone connected with all that. Okay, let me read you the quote. It says, in the weeks and months leading up to his death, Wheeler wanted to investigate the officials and agencies of Delaware, a state he considered corrupt after watching construction begin on the Battery Park house. A friend Wheeler made in the hacker community, who requested anonymity for obvious reasons, says Wheeler asked for lessons. I thought it was a little odd, says the hacker, but Jack was a really brilliant guy, and I gave him a reading list. One of the to-do lists Wheeler left behind, dated December 5th, mentions hacking a target associated with the construction dispute. Then there was a lawsuit. He ends up getting sued by his brother-in-law and his wife, who sues him and his wife and the other sister. Okay, so this in-law family, they're suing each other, and they're claiming that they have been harassed because Jack is hacking their emails and ruining their life. It's crazy. It says the suit, filed in San Francisco federal court in May by Henry and Carol Kleiss, claimed that Wheeler used, quote, the military expertise he had gained in cyber warfare to assist with the unending and intensified harassment. The goal of the conspiracy, the lawsuit claimed, was to persuade Henry Kleiss to allow his sisters to invest in his business ventures in medical devices. So they end up settling this lawsuit, so we don't know if the allegations were true, but you've got two separate people who don't seem connected to each other who are saying that Jack hacks, or is a hacker, or is trying to be a hacker. He also is an expert in cybersecurity and cyber warfare. Okay, so I don't know how that plays into the story, but I just felt like I should tell you about that. The last thing I have to tell you in the facts portion of the video is that the case is still unsolved, and it's officially considered a homicide. However, there's a lot of people who think this could have been an accident. Okay, which brings me to the theories. Let's talk about the theories. So some people talk about maybe because he was disoriented and he seemed vulnerable, someone took advantage of him. Maybe he was robbed There's the mugging theory, although that one with the fact that he still had some money on him and a Rolex. I mean, who's going to mug someone and not take their Rolex? You know what I mean? Maybe they didn't know the ring was valuable, but the Rolex, come on. So the other theory, though, is that maybe it wasn't a mugging. Maybe he got into some sort of argument with someone. He was upset, you know, he was disoriented. Maybe he said the wrong thing to the wrong person. They end up hitting him, killing him, and throwing him in a dumpster. That's one theory. The other theory is the accident theory. Now, this one is really popular online. Like when you go to Reddit or whatever, you will see that like most people are like, I don't understand why law enforcement is not seeing it this way. Like it seems completely obvious that what they think is that he was cold. Remember when he was talking to the parking attendant, he said he wanted to get warm. He was cold. We know that he didn't have a coat on him. We know that it was cold. So maybe he was sleeping in the dumpster. And turns out that's not the most unheard of thing. There's certain dumpsters that open a certain way and people sleep in them. Yes, it's crazy and gross to be sleeping in a trash, you know, among trash, but that could explain why he was so dirty. Maybe that was the only place he could get warm, and he was so disoriented that he was sleeping in the dumpster. So what about his injuries? Well, the trash compactor could have caused his injuries, you know, being thrown in the trash and all that. So that could make it look like he was beaten severely, is what people who believe this theory say. They also think, you know, it could just be the simplest thing. Like it could just be an accident, like a tragic, horrible thing, a result of him having an episode, and it's sad and it's depressing. Can you imagine being lost and confused and you don't know where you are and all you're doing is trying to get from point A to point B and you don't know where you are, and then he's getting angry because he's confused and he's getting in like colder and dirtier and in a worse position. He's now sleeping in a dumpster and then he just gets tossed into the landfill. I mean, oh my God. That's the accident theory. The thing is, police reject this theory. And the reason why they reject this theory is because they say that the injuries that they are privy to, that no one else is privy to, because like I said, no one knows exactly what the injuries are. They say that those are consistent with homicide. I found an article where it mentioned that the reporter got access to a photo that was taken of Jack's injuries that this family member showed him, and he said it looked more like a, quote, sustained pummeling than something from the accident theory would look like, although I don't know if this reporter is an expert on the injuries, but that was their take on it. This one really, until we know the injuries and compare it to what could have happened, or maybe a weapon, blunt force trauma could have been a weapon. So now the rest of the theories are consistent with what law enforcement said, which is that it's a homicide, blunt force trauma. Okay, so let's say it is. Who could it be? You have three options here. You have an enemy. Okay, this could be like a personal vendetta thing. So the neighbor who he bombed his home and was suing. This could also be someone that because he got angry and he would have these things, like maybe he had some other feud with someone else and that's what happened. But if you think about it, right, who would have the opportunity? If he is lost and wandering in Wilmington and his phone isn't on him, he has no way of reaching people, who's going to know where he is? Who's going to even recognize him as Jack? Seeing him in this condition, wandering, like the neighbor, how would the neighbor have known? Did the neighbor follow him? Maybe if the neighbor did break into the home the day after the smoke bomb thing, or I think 2 days after or the day after the smoke bomb thing, broke into it, ransacked it, took his briefcase and his badge and his phone just to mess with him. Like he don't want belongings, but he's like, oh, you're going to do this to my home? I'm going to take all the stuff you need for work. And then what, maybe followed him somewhere? Waited until he got all the way to Newark, 13 miles, or did something to him and took him 13 miles away and put him in a dumpster. The people who believe in the murder theory, they say that this seems like a hitman thing in terms of like the way the body was disposed. But also they're like, wouldn't a hitman just like use a gun? Why would they do something where you could get caught that would take longer time? But maybe they didn't want to have a weapon that could be traceable. So maybe it was like a hammer or some kind of weapon like that. We don't know with the blunt force trauma. So still could kind of be a hit, just in a way where there isn't a bullet or something in case the body is found. And then they put it in the dumpster far away so that it wouldn't be linked. And it just so happened the employees noticed the body, or else we would have never known what happened to Jack. So if there is a hitman, who hired the hitman? That's a whole other thing, because you've got so many conspiracy theories with that. They're like the military-industrial complex, because the chemical weapons, he was a whistleblower, he was critiquing them. And then it was like the Chinese hacking, something with the Chinese and the hacking. And then it was like the people that he was hacking, those government officials in Delaware, the people that he was harassing, allegedly, if what the brother-in-law says is true, maybe he was doing that with these other officials, and maybe they had someone take him out. I don't know. It's crazy. Then there was this other theory, which is kind of crazy, which I want to read you. Okay, listen to this quote. Okay, this is from an article. It says, then there's his friendship with Andrew Robert Levine, a home developer and former military man whose claim that he worked in special operations has attracted the attention of conspiracy theorists. 1 year later, in December 2011, Levine allegedly killed a jeweler in Connecticut, stole $300,000, and fled to Europe. He was arrested in Spain and found hung in his jail cell, and the cause of death was ruled a suicide. Very Epstein. Levine was also named as a suspect in a Colorado arson. New York police would not comment on Levine. So people are saying maybe he was involved, but why would he turn on his friend? I don't know. That seems like a whole case on its own, a whole nother story. But that's someone that I found that people talk about. His wife seems to think if it was a hitman, like she thinks it would be someone involved in the hacking that he was doing, like someone retaliating. So I would love to know what you guys think. If you ask me what I think there are two likely scenarios. One involves him accidentally trying to get warm and like going in there and then getting smashed. Given his mental state and how he was doing things that don't make sense. Like, remember, is it Eliza Lam or Elisa Lam? How she ended up in that tank in the hotel and she was like paranoid and it seemed like someone was behind her. But then it could have just been a mental health episode. It could kind of be that. I could see that. I could also see the hacking thing, because like he's getting sued. He's like having this feud with his neighbor. Like he seems like the type of person that would have major beef with someone. And when you have major beef with someone, they could kill you. Now, the circumstances of how that person would find him and the way he was disoriented, how that fits in, I'm not quite sure. But, you know, I can't completely 100% dismiss it. I'm like between those two options. I don't think it would be like a huge government conspiracy to silence him, because it doesn't seem like he was that big of a threat. If anything, it would be the local Delaware officials that he said were corrupt. I could see one of them doing something like this. My opinion. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. I'm dying to know. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to Drift for supporting my channel and sponsoring this video. If you guys are interested in their car air fresheners, check the link in the description. The smells are really nice. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
That's our broadcast for tonight.
See you next Tuesday.